You wake at the fifth bell, just as you have for the past 6,200 days. The recycled air tastes of metal and desperation, filtered through 10,000 kilometers of ductwork that hasn't been properly maintained since before your grandfather was born. Your cubicle in Administratum Block 37 measures exactly 3 meters by 2 meters by 2.5 meters high. You've measured it with requisition forms during the longer shifts. The walls are the color of old bone, painted with lead-based pigment that probably violates 17 different safety protocols that you've personally filed reports about. This morning feels different, though you can't yet put your finger on why. You perform your morning ablutions with the same mechanical precision that defines every aspect of Imperial life. 30 seconds to relieve yourself. 45 seconds to splash recycled water on your face. 15 seconds to consume your nutrition cube. Today's is protein paste flavored with synthetic chicken extract that tastes like regret and industrial lubricant. You dress in your Administratum robes, the ones with the small stain near the left shoulder that you've been meaning to replace for 3 years, but never quite managed to navigate the clothing requisition bureaucracy. The walk to your desk takes exactly 7 minutes and 33 seconds, through corridors that echo with the footsteps of 10,000 other souls engaged in the same dreary routine. The morning prayer chant drones from hidden speakers, a litany of submission and duty that you mouth along with automatically. The Emperor protects, the Emperor provides, the Emperor judges. Your workstation is exactly as you left it, 3 stacks of requisition forms requiring your stamp, 2 reports on ration distribution efficiency that need your signature, and 1 disciplinary memo about servos call maintenance that's been sitting there for 2 weeks. You've been a senior scribe, classification 7, for exactly 17 years, 4 months, and 12 days. Your greatest ambition is to reach classification 6 before you die. Your greatest fear, until this moment, was that you might not. You settle into your chair, the one with the broken lumbar support that you've been requesting replacement for through proper channels for 8 months, and reach for your stamping seal. That's when you notice the shadow. Arbitrator Vex stands in your cubicle entrance. You know it's Vex because his name is stenciled across his breastplate in Gothic script, and because he's the only law enforcement officer assigned to this sector. He's exactly 2 meters tall, wrapped in carapace armor the color of dried blood, and his skull-faced helmet reflects the sickly yellow glow of the overhead lumens in ways that make your stomach clench. In his gauntleted hand is a piece of parchment. Even from your chair, you can see your name inscribed in high Gothic across the top. Below it, a single word in Imperial script, pressed with an official seal that carries the authority of the throne itself. Hereticus, the taste in your mouth changes. The recycled air, which moments ago merely tasted of metal and desperation, now carries something else, something bitter and copper-tinged that makes your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth. Your heartbeat, previously inaudible beneath the hum of ventilation systems and the distant chatter of your colleagues, suddenly becomes the loudest sound in the universe. Each pulse thunders in your ears like artillery fire, drowning out the ambient noise of Hive Tertius, until all you can hear is the desperate rhythm of a heart that somehow knows it's about to stop mattering. Scribe designation 7749 Tertius Gamma, Vex says, and his voice carries the mechanical undertone of vox amplification. By the authority invested in me by the Adeptus Arbites, and in the name of the God Emperor of mankind, you are accused of heretical thought and treasonous action against the Imperium of man. The words don't make sense. They can't make sense. You've spent 17 years of your life in faithful service to the Golden Throne. Your loyalty scores are consistently above average. You've never missed a prayer session, never failed to report suspicious behavior among your colleagues, never even taken an unauthorized break during your 12-hour shifts. Well, except for those times when the dispensary servos call malfunctioned and you took an extra ration cube, but surely that's not. There must be some mistake, you hear yourself saying, though the voice sounds like it's coming from someone else entirely. I would never. Vex tilts his skull-faced helmet slightly, and somehow that small gesture conveys more menace than if he'd drawn his power maul. The Imperium does not make mistakes. Scribe 7749. Only citizens make mistakes. The question is whether you will compound your existing mistakes with the further mistake of resistance. Your cubicle neighbors have stopped their work. In your peripheral vision, you can see Scribe Hendrik peering over his partition wall, his eyes wide with a mixture of fascination and terror. Scribe Yulia has actually stood up from her desk, something you've never seen her do during work hours, and is staring with the kind of horrible curiosity that people reserve for transit accidents and public executions. The parchment crinkles as Vex extends it toward you. The sound is incredibly loud in the sudden silence that has descended over Administratum Block Tertius 7. You realize that every conversation has stopped, every stylus has ceased its scratching, every servoskull has paused in its mechanical flight patterns. 300 Imperial servants are watching you receive a death sentence, because that's what this is, isn't it? Whatever comes next, whoever you were 5 minutes ago has just ceased to exist. Scribe Designation 7749 Tertius Gamma, Senior Classification 7, Faithful Servant of the Emperor for 17 years, 4 months and 12 days, is dead. In his place sits a heretic, a traitor, an enemy of humanity itself. Your hands shake as you reach for the parchment. The official seal is warm to the touch, a detail that strikes you as absurdly important in this moment when every sensation feels heightened beyond normal human perception. The wax bears the mark of the Ordo Hereticus, pressed with such force that it's cracked slightly along one edge. You try to read the charges, but the words blur together. Something about seditious communications. Something about inappropriate interest in forbidden knowledge. Something about failure to report heretical thoughts among peers. Each accusation is time-stamped and cross-referenced with imperial legal codes that you recognize from your administrative work but have never understood. "I don't understand," you whisper, and you hate how pathetic your voice sounds. "What forbidden knowledge? What seditious communications? I process requisition forms. I stamp approval documents. I've never even spoken to anyone outside my immediate work detail except during mandatory social gatherings." "Understanding is not required," Vex replies. "Compliance is." That's when the real horror begins to set in. This isn't a mistake that can be corrected through proper channels. This isn't a bureaucratic error that can be resolved by filing the right forms in triplicate. This is the imperial justice system functioning exactly as designed, with the terrible efficiency of a machine that has been refined over 10,000 years of human suffering. Someone reported you. Someone who knows your daily routine, your work patterns, your habits. Someone who has been watching you carefully enough to document whatever infractions you've supposedly committed. You scan the faces of your colleagues, Hendrik with his nervous tics, Yulia with her obsessive organization habits, Scribe Marcus, who always smells faintly of Amasek and keeps a pic of his dead wife on his desk. Which one of them decided that you needed to disappear? The documentation indicates multiple witnesses, Vex continues, consulting a data slate attached to his belt. 17 separate incidents of suspicious behavior, logged over a period of 3 years, 7 months and 4 days. 3 years. Someone has been watching you for 3 years, carefully documenting every moment when you might have said something questionable, every instant when your loyalty might have appeared less than absolute, every joke that pushed the boundaries of acceptable humor, every sigh of frustration with imperial bureaucracy, every moment when you might have looked tired during mandatory prayer sessions. The mathematics of surveillance are suddenly, horribly clear. In a hive of 12 billion souls, the only way to maintain order is to make every citizen a potential informant against every other citizen. The Imperium doesn't need to watch everyone directly, it just needs to make sure that everyone is watching everyone else. Your breakfast cube threatens to come back up. The synthetic chicken flavoring tastes like acid as bile rises in your throat. You swallow hard, forcing it down, because vomiting in front of an arbitrator would probably be interpreted as an admission of guilt. What happens now? You ask, though part of you already knows the answer. Vex's helmet turns slightly, and you catch a glimpse of the red optical lenses that serve as his eyes. Now you learn the mercy of imperial justice. Stand. You stand on legs that feel like they're made of recycled water. Around you, the administratum continues its work with carefully maintained normalcy. Your colleagues have returned to their desks, their heads bent over their forms and reports, their styluses scratching across parchment with deliberate focus. They're all working very hard to appear completely uninvolved in whatever is happening to you, but you can feel their attention like a physical weight. Everyone is listening. Everyone is watching from the corners of their eyes. Everyone is taking careful note of how imperial justice operates, filing away the lesson for future reference. This is education as much as enforcement. Your destruction will serve as a reminder to every witness that the Emperor's gaze is always watching, that the price of heresy is not merely death but something far worse. Vex produces a set of restraints, not crude shackles, but precision-engineered devices that lock around your wrists with a soft clicking sound. The metal is cold against your skin, and you notice that the restraints bear the same skull motif as Vex's helmet. Even the implements of imperial justice are works of art, crafted with the same attention to detail that goes into cathedral architecture and bolter shells. Scribe designation 7749 Tertius Gamma. Vex announces in a voice that carries throughout the entire administrative block. You are hereby remanded to the custody of the Adeptus Arbites for crimes against the Imperium of Man and the God Emperor of Terra. May he have mercy on your soul. The prayer that follows is recited by 300 voices in perfect unison. The Emperor protects the faithful, judges the heretic, and grants mercy to the repentant. In his name, we deliver justice. In his name, we preserve humanity. You mouth the words along with everyone else, because not participating in a prayer session would be yet another mark against you. The irony is not lost on you. You're praying for your own destruction, asking the Emperor to grant mercy to a heretic who is yourself. As Vex escorts you from your cubicle, you catch a glimpse of your workstation one last time. The 3 stacks of requisition forms still sit there, waiting for your stamp. The 2 reports still need your signature. The disciplinary memo about servos call maintenance is still exactly where you left it. Someone else will complete your work. Someone else will sit in your chair, use your stamp, process the same endless stream of imperial bureaucracy that has defined your existence for the past 17 years. In the grand machinery of the Imperium, you are utterly replaceable, as insignificant as a single rivet in a battleship hull. But as a heretic, as a traitor, as an enemy of humanity, you have suddenly become very significant indeed. Your destruction will serve purposes that your life never could. The corridor outside Administratum Block Tertius 7 stretches ahead like the throat of some vast beast. Other imperial citizens press themselves against the walls as you pass, careful not to make eye contact, desperate to avoid any association with the contamination of heresy that now surrounds you like an aura. You want to tell them that you're innocent. You want to explain that this is all a mistake, that you've been a faithful servant of the Emperor your entire life, that you've never had a heretical thought in your head. But as Vex's armored boots echo against the metal deck plating, as the familiar sights and sounds of your daily life disappear behind you forever, you begin to understand that innocence and guilt are not concepts that apply to your situation. You are not being punished for what you've done. You are being transformed into what the Imperium needs you to become. And the slow crushing is about to begin. The Arbitrator Fortress rises from the lower levels of Hive Tertius like a cancer of black stone and rusted metal. You've walked past its outer gates thousands of times during your daily commutes, never really noticing the details. Now, as Vex guides you through the primary entrance, You become acutely aware of every architectural element designed to inspire terror and submission. The gates are 20 meters tall, carved from a single piece of obsidian that bears the fossilized remains of creatures that died before humanity learned to speak. The imperial aquila spreads its wings across the entrance, each feather etched with microscripture that contains the full text of the Arbitrator Codex. Servoskulls patrol the perimeter in precise geometric patterns, their optical sensors tracking your movement with mechanical precision. But it's the sound that gets to you first, a low, subsonic hum that seems to vibrate through your bones. It's not machinery, though the fortress contains thousands of mechanical systems. It's not generators, though the power requirements of imperial justice are enormous. It takes you several minutes to realize what you're hearing, the combined voices of thousands of prisoners, their screams and prayers and pleas blending together into a constant background chorus of human suffering. "First time?" asks the processing scribe, though his question is clearly rhetorical. He's a thin man with augmetic eyes that click and whir as they focus on your face. His desk sits in the center of a vast hall lined with holding cells, and behind him stretches a corridor that disappears into darkness punctuated only by the occasional flicker of emergency lumens. Vex places your arrest documentation on the scribe's desk with mechanical precision. Standard heresy charges, multiple witnesses, classification, slow crush protocol 7. The processing scribe's augmetic eyes click again, and you realize he's photographing you for the imperial records. Slow crush 7. That's a long engagement. Medical assessment indicates the subject should last. He pauses, consulting a data slate that hums with calculation. Minimum 8 years, optimal 12 years, maximum sustained engagement 14 years assuming no major organ failure. You want to ask what sustained engagement means, but the words stick in your throat. Some questions are better left unanswered, at least for now. The intake procedures begin immediately. Your administratum robes are removed and replaced with a prisoner's shift made from rough cloth that smells of industrial disinfectant and previous occupants' fierce sweat. Your personal possessions, a chronometer that belonged to your father, a small aquila pin that you've worn for luck, a handful of ration chits, disappear into an evidence bag that will probably never be opened again. The branding comes next. Not the crude scarification you might expect, but a precise application of molecular acid that burns the mark of the heretic directly into your forehead. The pain is extraordinary, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is that the brand is designed to regenerate if anyone attempts to remove it. You will carry this mark for the rest of your life, however long that might be. Processing complete, the scribe announces. Subject 7749 is cleared for integration into the slow crush facility. Transport to level 777. Level 777. Even in your current situation, the bureaucratic precision of imperial designation systems strikes you as absurd. Somewhere in the vast archives of the administratum, there's probably a form that designates exactly why your torture will take place on level 777, instead of level 776 or 778. The transport is a servo-controlled platform that descends through the fortress's interior structure with mechanical steadiness. As you drop deeper into the building's bowels, you pass level after level of holding cells, processing chambers, and facilities whose purposes you can't even begin to imagine. Each level is marked with high Gothic numerals and imperial classifications. Level 400, Standard Interrogation. Level 500, Enhanced Questioning. Level 600, Penitent Reconstruction. At level 650, the platform stops to take on another passenger. She might have been your age, though it's difficult to tell. Her hair has been shaved off, revealing a skull covered in surgical scars that form intricate patterns across her scalp. Her prisoner's shift hangs loose on a frame that suggests months of systematic malnutrition. But it's her eyes that make you look away. They're the eyes of someone who has seen things that should not exist witnessed horrors that human consciousness wasn't designed to process. First time going down? She asks, and her voice carries the particular kind of cheerfulness that comes from complete psychological break. Oh, you're going to love level 777. That's where they keep the special ones. The ones who get the full treatment. You want to ask what she means, but the platform lurches back into motion before you can form the words. I'm from level 650, she continues conversationally. Standard interrogation. They've been asking me about my husband for. Oh, how long has it been? 7 months? 8. Time gets a bit fuzzy when they're restructuring your memory patterns twice a week. The casual way she discusses torture makes your skin crawl. Your husband. Former husband, she corrects with a giggle that sounds like breaking glass. Turns out he was reporting my conversations to the local Arbites for 3 years before they arrested me. Apparently, I complained about ration quality too often, made jokes about imperial efficiency. Once I said that the emperor might be having a bad millennium because of all the chaos. She pauses, her scarred head tilting as if she's listening to something you can't hear. He testified against me, you know. Stood right there in the interrogation chamber and told them every private conversation we'd ever had. Every moment of weakness, every expression of doubt, every time I'd been less than perfectly faithful to the imperial creed. They let me watch the recording. The platform shudders as it passes level 700, and you glimpse a corridor lined with doors that look like they belong in a medici facility. Clean white surfaces, pristine lighting, the kind of sterile environment where precise work gets done. The funny part, she continues, is that they're keeping me here to make sure my testimony is consistent when they eventually process him for his own charges. Because reporting heresy is suspicious behavior too, isn't it? Why would a loyal citizen be in a position to witness so much treasonous activity unless they were complicit somehow? Level 750. The air tastes different here, heavier, with an undertone of ozone and something else you can't identify. Chemical preservatives, perhaps, industrial lubricants. The metallic tang of blood that's been thoroughly cleaned but never quite eliminated. He'll probably end up on level 800, the woman muses. That's where they keep the ones who have betrayed family members. Slower process than what you'll get. Less efficient. More artistic. Level 777. The platform stops with mechanical precision, and servo arms extend from the walls to guide you toward the exit. The woman waves goodbye with fingers that end in surgical stumps where her nails used to be. Have fun in there, she calls cheerfully as the doors close between you. Remember, the screaming is supposed to be therapeutic. For them, not for you. The corridor beyond the platform is beautiful. That's the most horrible thing about it. Beautiful in the way that imperial cathedrals are beautiful, with soaring arches and intricate stonework that speaks to 10,000 years of architectural refinement. The walls are lined with murals depicting the emperor's victory over heresy, detailed frescoes showing traitors being purified through systematic application of imperial justice. But it's the sounds that make you stumble. Through the walls, muffled by meters of stone and steel, you can hear them, voices raised in prayer, screaming that modulates into song. Mechanical grinding punctuated by organic sounds that your mind refuses to categorize. Laughter that goes on too long and ends too suddenly. Your escort, not Vex, but a new arbitrator whose nameplate reads Kastner, notices your expression. First time hearing the chorus of the penitent, he observes. Most people find it disturbing initially. You'll learn to appreciate the music in time. The processing chamber at the end of the corridor could be mistaken for a medici facility if not for the restraint systems. Clean white walls, precise lighting, examination tables equipped with monitoring equipment that hums with electronic activity. Tech priests move between the stations with mechanical efficiency, their augmetic limbs performing calibrations on devices whose purposes you don't want to understand. Subject 7749, Kastner announces to the room. Slow Crush Protocol 7, duration estimated at 12 years optimal engagement. One of the tech priests approaches, a figure so heavily modified with cybernetics that only the basic human torso remains organic. His optical sensors focus on you with the sound of camera lenses adjusting, and his Vox grill produces a stream of binary cant that somehow conveys professional assessment. Excellent bone density, the tech priest observes in accented Gothic. Superior cardiovascular efficiency. Psychological baseline indicates above-average resistance to standard braking protocols. This one will provide significant educational value. Educational value. The words hang in the air like incense smoke, heavy with implications you're not ready to confront. A medical servitor approaches with a syringe filled with luminescent blue fluid. The injection burns as it enters your bloodstream, and you feel your consciousness becoming strangely detached from your physical form. Not unconscious, that would be merciful, but distanced, as if you're observing events from outside your own body. Preparation complete, the tech priest announces. Subject is ready for integration into the slow crush apparatus. Estimated initial session duration, 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 full days. As the servitors guide you toward a device that looks like a combination throne and torture rack, you catch a glimpse of the observation gallery above the chamber. Rows of seats filled with figures in official robes, arbitrators, tech priests, ecclesiarchy personnel, and others whose affiliations you can't identify. They're all watching, taking notes, learning from your destruction how to better destroy others. The beauty of the slow crush protocol, Kastner explains conversationally as the servitors lock you into the apparatus, is that it serves multiple imperial purposes simultaneously. Education for our personnel, deterrent for potential heretics, efficient resource utilization through extended processing cycles, and of course, the opportunity for genuine repentance through systematic purification. The machine activates with a sound like a hymnal being sung by mechanical voices. Pressure plates adjust to fit your body with precision that speaks to centuries of refinement. Monitoring cables attach to your skin with the gentleness of a lover's touch. You should know, Kastner adds as he reviews the settings on a control lectern, that this facility has processed over 3 million subjects since its establishment. The average duration of engagement is 7 years and 4 months. The record holder lasted 23 years before achieving final purification. 23 years. Some subjects find it helpful to maintain perspective during the process, he continues. Your individual suffering serves the greater good of humanity. Your pain prevents the pain of others. Your destruction preserves the Imperium that protects billions of loyal souls. The pressure begins as a gentle caress, barely noticeable except for the psychological weight of knowing what's coming. You can feel the machine's sensors mapping every bone, every joint, every pressure point where maximum effect can be achieved with minimum permanent damage. The process has been refined over 10 millennia, Kastner explains, his voice taking on the tone of a lecturer addressing students. Early techniques were inefficient, subjects expired too quickly, educational value was limited. Modern slow crush protocols represent the pinnacle of imperial justice technology. In the observation gallery, someone raises their hand to ask a question. You can't make out the words, but Kastner's response is clearly audible. Psychological resistance varies by subject, but the beauty of the physical approach is that it bypasses most mental defenses. The body teaches the mind lessons that philosophy cannot. The pressure increases incrementally, not enough to cause damage yet, but sufficient to let you know that the machine could crush you instantly if it chose to. Instead, it will take its time, 12 years of time. Your first session will focus on acclimatization, Kastner continues, familiarizing you with the sensation, establishing baseline pain thresholds, beginning the educational process that will transform you from heretic to penitent. Above you, the observation gallery fills with the sound of styluses scratching on parchment. Your destruction is being documented with the same bureaucratic precision that once defined your work in the administratum. The irony would be funny if you could still remember how to laugh. But the pressure is building now, and thinking becomes more difficult. The machine knows exactly how much force to apply to cause maximum discomfort without triggering unconsciousness. Every adjustment is calculated to keep you aware and experiencing every moment of the process. "Welcome to level 777, Kastner says as he prepares to leave the chamber. "Your education in Imperial mercy begins now." The door seals with the finality of a tomb closing, and the slow crushing truly begins. Day 1 feels like drowning in reverse. Instead of liquid filling your lungs, it's pressure, systematic, calculated pressure that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The slow crush apparatus doesn't simply squeeze you like some crude medieval device. It's far more sophisticated than that, a masterpiece of imperial engineering that applies force with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel and the patience of a saint. You discover that human bone is remarkably resilient when compressed gradually. The femur can withstand pressures that would crush steel if applied suddenly, but spread that same force over hours or days, and the calcium matrix begins to develop microscopic fractures that spread like spider webs through the mineral structure. Your ribs flex inward with each breath, not quite enough to puncture your lungs, but sufficient to make every inhalation a conscious effort. The machine hums with each adjustment, servo motors whining softly as pressure plates shift to accommodate the slight compression of your body. Monitoring cables track your vital signs with obsessive precision: heart rate, blood pressure, neural activity, bone density measurements taken in real time through sonic resonance imaging. When your pain levels spike too high, the machine backs off slightly. When your body begins to adapt, it increases the pressure accordingly. You are being crushed by mathematics. The first fracture occurs at 17 hours and 43 minutes. A hairline crack in your left radius that shows up as a red indicator light on the machine's status display. A medical servitor immediately appears, injecting something that makes the pain recede to merely unbearable levels while simultaneously preventing the bone from healing properly. You will feel this fracture for the rest of your life, however long that might be. "Excellent progress," observes Tech Priest Deltrian during his morning inspection round. He's been assigned as your primary monitor, a role he approaches with the enthusiasm of an artist discussing his latest masterpiece. Bone compression proceeding within optimal parameters. No major organ displacement. Subject maintains consciousness and cognitive function. Cognitive function. As if the ability to think clearly while being slowly crushed to death represents some kind of achievement. By day 3, you've learned to measure time by the sound of your own bones settling. The ribs make a soft creaking noise as they compress, like old ship timbers adjusting to changing weather. Your spine produces occasional pops as vertebrae shift against each other under the constant downward pressure. Most disturbing are the sounds you can't identify, internal noises that might be cartilage compressing or organs repositioning themselves to accommodate your slowly changing body shape. The machine allows you to sleep, but only in carefully measured intervals. Extended unconsciousness would interfere with the educational process, so servo injectors deliver stimulants whenever your brain activity drops below acceptable levels. Sleep becomes a brief respite that ends precisely when your body most needs it, leaving you perpetually exhausted but never allowed to escape into unconsciousness. Week 2 brings visitors. The first is Arbitrator Vex, who observes your progress with what might be professional satisfaction. Physical compression proceeding according to schedule, he notes, consulting a data slate that displays your body's measurements in real time. Height reduced by 2.7 centimeters. Thoracic cavity compressed by 4.2 centimeters. Bone density decreased by 12%. He turns to address someone outside your field of vision, another arbitrator perhaps, or a visiting dignitary interested in observing imperial justice in action. The beauty of the slow crush protocol is its educational value. Traditional execution provides momentary satisfaction but no lasting lesson. This process creates a living demonstration of imperial mercy that can educate observers for years. You want to ask about the mercy he mentioned, but speaking requires breath, and breathing requires effort that you're not sure you can spare. Every word costs precious energy that your compressed lungs struggle to provide. The second visitor is more unexpected. Scribe Yulia from your former workplace. She stands at the observation window looking down at you with an expression that might be curiosity or might be satisfaction. It's difficult to read faces when your perspective is limited to what you can see while locked in a crushing machine. "That's him," she says to her escort, a junior arbitrator whose nameplate you can't read from this angle. "Scribe 7749. I worked 3 desks away from him for 8 years. What made you suspicious of his activities?" The arbitrator asks, and you realize this is an educational visit. Yulia is being rewarded for her successful identification of heretical behavior, with a chance to observe the results of her vigilance. "Nothing specific at first," Yulia replies, "but he would sometimes pause during prayer sessions. Not obviously, just a slight delay before joining in the responses. And he kept his workspace too clean, suspicious attention to detail that suggested he was hiding something." Too clean. You maintained your workspace according to administratum regulations, the same regulations that Yulia followed, the same standards that every imperial servant was expected to meet. But apparently, meeting those standards too precisely was itself suspicious behavior worthy of investigation. "Excellent observational skills," the arbitrator commends. "Your report led directly to the investigation that uncovered 17 separate incidents of suspicious behavior. The Emperor rewards faithful servants who protect their fellows from corruption." Yulia nods with satisfaction. "Will he? Does the process ever end?" "The subject's estimated duration is 12 years optimal engagement," the arbitrator explains. "During that time, he will serve as both educational example and cautionary tale. His suffering prevents the suffering of others by demonstrating the consequences of heretical thought." 12 years. From your position in the machine, you can see a chronometer display that shows elapsed time since the process began. 14 days, 7 hours, 22 minutes. The mathematics are staggering. You have endured less than 1% of your projected crushing duration. Week 3 introduces the concept of graduated pressure application. Instead of constant, steady compression, the machine begins to vary its approach. Periods of increased pressure followed by slight relief, creating a rhythm that your body learns to anticipate. The relief phases become psychologically crucial, moments when you can draw deeper breaths, when the pain recedes to merely agonizing levels, when hope briefly surfaces that maybe the worst is over. Then the pressure returns, always slightly greater than before. Psychological conditioning through variable reinforcement. Tech priest Dystopian explains to a group of visiting students from the Schola Progenium. The subject's mind creates emotional attachment to the relief phases, making the resumed compression more psychologically devastating than constant pressure would achieve. The students take careful notes, their young faces displaying the mixture of fascination and horror that comes from witnessing imperial justice for the first time. One raises her hand to ask a question. What prevents the subject from simply accepting death as preferable to continued suffering? "Excellent question, Cadet Voss," Dystopian replies. "The medical monitoring systems prevent voluntary termination through biological shutdown. Additionally, the process is specifically calibrated to maintain hope. Each relief phase suggests that mercy might be possible, that repentance might be accepted, that survival might be achievable through sufficient demonstration of loyalty." Hope as a weapon. The cruelest torture device in the Imperial arsenal isn't the machine that's slowly crushing your bones. It's the possibility that this might end, that you might somehow survive, that sufficient suffering might purchase forgiveness. Month 2 brings structural changes to your body that the machine accommodates with mechanical precision. Your ribcage has compressed enough that your lungs operate at 60% normal capacity. Your spine has shortened by 7 centimeters, creating a visible hunch that makes you appear older and more fragile than your actual age. Most disturbing are the changes you can feel but not see: internal organs shifting position, blood vessels rerouting around compressed tissues, muscle mass redistributing as your frame shrinks. The medical servitors monitor these changes constantly, making adjustments to ensure that nothing fatal occurs while maximizing the educational impact of your transformation. Nutrient feeds maintain basic biological function while allowing your body to slowly consume itself under the constant pressure. Medication prevents infection while ensuring that every nerve remains functional and capable of transmitting pain signals. You are being compressed into a living demonstration of imperial justice, your body transformed into a textbook that others can read to learn about the consequences of heresy. Subject adaptation proceeding optimally, Deltrian notes during his weekly assessment. Bone compression at 27%, muscular atrophy within acceptable parameters. Psychological profile indicates continued hope for survival, excellent foundation for the next phase of processing. Next phase. The words carry implications that make your already labored breathing become even more shallow. Physical crushing establishes the foundation, Deltrian continues, apparently addressing another group of observers. But the true artistry of the slow crush protocol lies in the systematic dismantling of identity, memory, and spiritual foundation. The subject's body is merely the canvas upon which we will paint a masterpiece of imperial justice. Through the observation window, you can see new equipment being wheeled into the chamber, devices whose purposes you don't recognize but whose sinister appearance suggests they're designed for procedures far more invasive than simple physical compression. Tomorrow we begin Phase 2, Deltrian announces with something that might be anticipation in his mechanical voice. The excavation of memory and the reconstruction of identity. By the time we're finished, this subject will understand not only why he deserves to suffer, but will actively participate in ensuring that his suffering serves the greatest possible educational value. The pressure plates adjust one final time for the day, compressing your already broken body just slightly more. Tomorrow, you learn, the machine will begin working on your mind. But tonight, as the lumens dim to simulate the day-night cycle that your body no longer experiences naturally, you have a few hours to contemplate what you've learned during these first 2 months of systematic destruction. Your body is failing in precisely calculated increments. Your bones are breaking according to a predetermined schedule. Your flesh is being compressed into new configurations that serve imperial purposes rather than biological ones. And this is still the merciful part of your punishment. The real horror, you're beginning to understand, hasn't even started yet. The excavation of your mind begins at dawn on the 63rd day, with the delicate insertion of neural interface cables directly into your compressed skull. You watch in the reflection of the observation window as Tech Priest Deltrian makes precise incisions through your scalp, his mechadendrite appendages working with surgical precision to implant the hairline conduits that will carry your thoughts and memories into the Imperium's vast analytical engines. The local anesthetic prevents physical pain, but there's something deeply violating about feeling the cables slide through bone and brain tissue to make contact with your neural pathways. Memory extraction requires careful preparation, Deltrian explains to his audience of Adeptus observers. Crude interrogation techniques risk destroying valuable information. The archaeocognitive protocol preserves every memory while allowing selective examination and modification of their emotional context. The first sensation is like having someone else's thoughts inserted directly into your consciousness. Not painful, exactly, but profoundly wrong, foreign concepts and memories that don't belong to you suddenly occupying space in your mind, alongside your own recollections. You realize these are calibration signals, the machine's way of mapping the neural pathways it will soon begin to explore. Initiate baseline cognitive mapping, Dystopian orders, and suddenly you're experiencing your entire life simultaneously. Every birthday celebration erupts in your awareness at once, 17 different versions of yourself blowing out candles, receiving gifts, feeling the brief joy that comes with being temporarily special. Every first day of work floods through your consciousness, from your initial assignment as a junior scribe to your eventual promotion to classification 7. Every conversation with your parents, every interaction with colleagues, every moment of happiness or sadness or fear or hope plays out in parallel streams of recollection. The overwhelming sensation makes you scream, but the sound that emerges from your compressed throat is barely a whisper. Your vocal cords, like everything else, have been systematically damaged by the ongoing physical crushing. Excellent neural response, Dystopian observes with satisfaction. Memory architecture is well preserved. Emotional associations remain strong. Beginning selective extraction sequence. The extraction feels like having pieces of yourself surgically removed while you remain conscious and aware. One moment you're reliving your 8th birthday party, the taste of synthetic cake, the sound of your mother's laughter, the feeling of being loved and safe, and then the memory is simply gone. Not forgotten, but absent, as if that event had never occurred at all. The machine works methodically through your recollections, removing moments of happiness first. Every pleasant memory disappears from your consciousness like pages torn from a book, leaving gaps that you can sense but not identify. You know something important is missing, but you can't remember what. The process follows established psychological principles, Dystopian lectures, while your childhood disappears piece by piece. Positive memories provide emotional stability and identity foundation. Remove them systematically, and the subject's psychological structure becomes increasingly unstable, more susceptible to reconstruction according to imperial requirements. Your first kiss vanishes. The pride you felt when receiving your administratum assignment evaporates. The quiet satisfaction of completing your work properly, the small daily pleasures that made existence bearable, all extracted with surgical precision and fed into data storage systems that will preserve them long after you've forgotten they ever existed. But the machine doesn't just remove memories, it replaces them. Where your 8th birthday party used to be, there's now a recollection of your mother expressing disappointment in your failure to properly recite imperial prayers. The synthetic cake tastes of ash and regret. Her laughter becomes criticism, cutting and sharp, focused on your inadequacies as a loyal imperial citizen. Memory modification requires careful attention to psychological coherence. Dystopian continues his lecture while your past is systematically rewritten. Simply inserting false recollections would create cognitive dissonance and potential mental breakdown. Instead, we preserve the emotional structure while altering the factual content to support desired behavioral outcomes. Your promotion to classification 7 transforms into a disciplinary hearing, where your supervisor reluctantly allows you to keep your position despite obvious shortcomings in loyalty and competence. The pride becomes shame. The achievement becomes failure narrowly avoided through imperial mercy that you didn't deserve. Every conversation with colleagues is altered to emphasize your suspicious behavior, your questionable loyalty, your tendency toward heretical thinking. Words you never spoke are inserted into your memory with such precision that you believe you actually said them. Thoughts you never had become central to your self-perception. The subject is now experiencing authentic guilt for crimes he genuinely believes he committed, Dystopian announces with satisfaction. This eliminates the psychological resistance that typically accompanies false accusations. He knows he is guilty because he remembers being guilty. And you do remember. The memories feel completely real, more real than reality, because they're supported by the emotional conviction that only authentic recollection can provide. You remember complaining about imperial efficiency during work breaks. You remember making jokes about the Emperor's 10,000-year reign. You remember expressing sympathy for planets consumed by tyrannid hive fleets, as if human suffering mattered more than imperial glory. The guilt is overwhelming. How could you have been so foolish, so treacherous, so utterly unworthy of the Emperor's protection? The evidence of your heresy exists in your own memory, undeniable and complete. You deserve everything that's happening to you. Phase 2 progression excellent, Deltrian notes. Subject now demonstrates authentic self-condemnation, beginning advanced identity reconstruction protocols. The advanced protocols are worse than simple memory modification. Instead of just changing your past, they begin to alter your fundamental understanding of who you are. Your name becomes associated with shame and failure. Your face in reflective surfaces looks like the face of a traitor. Your voice, when you manage to speak, sounds like the voice of someone who deserves punishment. But the cruelest modification is the implantation of betrayal memories. You remember, with perfect clarity and devastating emotional impact, the moment when you decided to report your friend Hendrik for suspicious behavior. The memory is so vivid that you can taste the fear in your mouth as you filled out the denunciation forms, feel the weight of the stylus in your hand as you signed your colleague's death warrant. Except you never reported Hendrik. You've never reported anyone for heretical behavior. But the memory is absolutely real, complete with emotional context that makes you sick with self-loathing. You remember the calculations, how reporting Hendrik might deflect attention from your own questionable loyalty, how his destruction might purchase your safety. You remember enjoying it. The memory of watching Hendrik's arrest fills you with remembered satisfaction. You can recall standing at your workstation, pretending to review requisition forms while actually observing his terror as the arbitrators led him away. The power you felt in that moment, the sense of superiority over someone whose loyalty was even more questionable than your own. Betrayal memories create the deepest psychological wounds, Deltrian explains to a new group of observers. The subject now believes himself capable of destroying innocent colleagues to preserve his own safety. This eliminates any possibility of maintaining heroic self-image during the remainder of the process. More betrayal memories follow. You remember reporting your neighbor for maintaining an unlicensed shrine in his apartment. You remember documenting suspicious conversations overheard in transport queues. You remember the methodical way you collected evidence against fellow administratum workers, building cases against them with the patience of a professional investigator. Each memory feels completely authentic because the machine has perfectly reproduced the emotional context that would accompany such actions. The fear, the calculation, the small moments of cruel satisfaction, all of it feels like genuine recollection because your brain can't distinguish between implanted memories and real ones when they're inserted with sufficient technical precision. The subject now believes himself to be exactly the kind of person who deserves imperial justice, Deltrian announces. Identity reconstruction complete. Beginning spiritual preparation protocols. Spiritual preparation. The words carry implications that make your already damaged mind recoil in horror. Through the observation window, you can see robed figures entering the chamber, members of the ecclesiarchy whose presence suggests that the next phase of your destruction will focus on your relationship with the God Emperor himself. But before they begin their work, Deltrian makes one final adjustment to the neural interface cables. The sensation that follows is like having your soul turned inside out and examined under harsh light. One last modification, he explains conversationally. The subject will now remember every moment of his extraction and reconstruction process with perfect clarity. This eliminates any possibility of psychological escape through amnesia or dissociation. And suddenly, you do remember everything. You remember watching your authentic memories being extracted and destroyed. You remember the moment when false recollections were implanted to replace them. You remember the systematic construction of your current identity from carefully selected lies and manufactured guilt. But the cruelest part is that the knowledge doesn't help. Even knowing that your memories of betrayal are artificial constructions, you still feel the emotional weight of the guilt they carry. Even understanding that your self-loathing has been systematically programmed into your consciousness, you can't escape the conviction that you deserve everything that's happening to you. The machine has made you complicit in your own destruction by forcing you to believe that you chose to become the person who deserves this punishment. As the ecclesiarchy priests begin their preparations for the next phase, you realize that your mind, like your body, has been transformed into something that serves imperial purposes rather than your own. Your thoughts, your memories, your very identity now exist to demonstrate the consequences of heresy to others. You are no longer a person being punished for crimes. You have become a living educational tool, your consciousness sculpted into a form that will teach proper lessons about loyalty and betrayal, faith and heresy, the mercy of the emperor, and the price of defying his will. And the worst part is that you genuinely believe you deserve it. The confessor arrives with the morning prayer bell on the 90th day, his crimson robes rustling like the wings of some massive carrion bird as he approaches your compressed and broken form. Father Matthias, the nameplate on his chest, bears the seal of the ecclesiarchy and several purity awards that catch the harsh chamber lighting, carries himself with the confident bearing of a man who has never doubted his purpose or questioned his faith. Unlike the tech priests who view your destruction as a technical challenge, or the arbitrators who see you as a problem requiring solution, Father Matthias looks at you with something that might be compassion. This makes him infinitely more terrifying than any of your previous torturers. "My child," he says, and his voice carries the warm authority of absolute certainty, "I have come to save your soul." The spiritual conditioning begins with prayer, not the rote recitation of imperial liturgy that you've performed thousands of times throughout your life, but prayer as a weapon directed against your own consciousness. Hour after hour, Father Matthias leads you through devotional exercises specifically designed to emphasize your unworthiness, your corruption, your desperate need for imperial mercy that you can never truly deserve. "Repeat after me," he instructs, his voice carrying the hypnotic cadence of trained oratory. "I am a heretic and a traitor to the God Emperor of mankind." The words feel like broken glass in your compressed throat, but you speak them because refusing would only prove your continued corruption. "I am a heretic and a traitor to the God Emperor of mankind. I have betrayed the trust of my fellow imperial citizens. I have betrayed the trust of my fellow imperial citizens. I deserve every moment of suffering that imperial justice provides. I deserve every moment of suffering that imperial justice provides." Each repetition burns deeper into your consciousness, not because the words themselves carry power, but because Father Matthias has a gift for making you feel the emotional truth behind them. When you recite your crimes, you experience genuine shame for the artificial memories that the tech priests implanted. When you confess your unworthiness, you feel authentic self-loathing for the person you believe you've always been. The beauty of spiritual correction, Father Matthias explains to his audience of junior clergy members, lies not in forcing the subject to mouth empty words, but in creating genuine emotional connection to imperial truth. By the time we're finished, this heretic will not simply say he deserves punishment. He will feel grateful for the opportunity to suffer in service to the emperor's will. Grateful. The word hangs in the recycled air like incense smoke, heavy with implications you're not ready to confront. The prayer sessions extend for hours at a time, broken only by periods of reflection where Father Matthias guides you through detailed examination of your manufactured sins. He has access to all the false memories implanted by the tech priests, and he helps you explore each betrayal, each moment of disloyalty, each failure of faith with the patience of a master craftsman examining his materials. "Tell me about the moment you decided to report your colleague Hendrik," he instructs, settling into a chair beside your crushing apparatus with the comfortable familiarity of long practice. Not just the facts. I want you to explore the emotions you felt, the calculations you made, the way it felt to choose your own safety over loyalty to a fellow servant of the Emperor. And you tell him because the memory feels completely real and the guilt is overwhelming. You describe the fear that motivated your betrayal, the careful way you documented Hendrik's suspicious behavior, the satisfaction you felt when watching his arrest. The words come easily because the emotions behind them are authentic. The tech priests were thorough in their psychological conditioning. Excellent, Father Matthias approves. You're beginning to understand the depth of your corruption. But understanding is not enough. True repentance requires that you feel genuine gratitude for the opportunity to atone through suffering. Gratitude for suffering. The concept seems impossible until Father Matthias begins to explain the theological framework that makes it not only possible but necessary. Consider, he says, his voice taking on the rhythm of a sermon, that the God Emperor of mankind has countless ways to punish heretics. He could simply allow you to die and face judgment in the warp, where your corrupted soul would provide entertainment for demons for eternity. Instead, he has granted you this opportunity, this precious chance to purify yourself through systematic suffering in service to imperial education. The logic is inescapable when presented with such conviction. Your current situation, however terrible, is actually a form of mercy. The Emperor could have simply destroyed you, but instead he's provided a path to redemption through service as a living example of imperial justice. Every moment of your pain prevents the pain of others, Father Matthias continues. Every day of your crushing serves as education for imperial citizens who might otherwise be tempted toward heretical thought. Your suffering is not punishment. It's the most valuable service you will ever perform for humanity. The reframing is psychologically devastating. Instead of being a victim of imperial cruelty, you're being repositioned as a willing participant in a noble cause. Your destruction serves a greater purpose, transforms meaningless suffering into meaningful sacrifice. But true spiritual purification requires more than passive acceptance, Father Matthias explains, as he produces a data slate containing names and images of new prisoners being processed into the facility. You must actively participate in the preservation of imperial loyalty by helping to identify additional corruption among your former associates. The data slate displays faces you recognize, colleagues from the administratum, neighbors from your residential block, acquaintances from mandatory social gatherings. Next to each image are detailed psychological profiles and assessment forms waiting for your input. Your intimate knowledge of these individuals makes you uniquely qualified to identify subtle signs of heretical thinking, Father Matthias explains. A word spoken in moment of weakness, a gesture that suggested insufficient enthusiasm for imperial doctrine, a facial expression that indicated doubt about the Emperor's wisdom. You want to refuse. You want to tell Father Matthias that these people are innocent, that they've done nothing to deserve the fate that awaits heretics in imperial custody. But the artificial memories of your own betrayals make such protests feel hypocritical. If you were capable of reporting Hendrik, of destroying your neighbor over an unlicensed shrine, of methodically documenting the suspicious behavior of fellow workers, then refusing to cooperate now would be inconsistent with your established character. Besides, Father Matthias makes it clear that cooperation is not optional. Refusal to assist in identifying corruption would itself be evidence of continued heretical thinking, he explains with gentle firmness. The Emperor's mercy extends to those who demonstrate genuine repentance through active service. Those who remain passive in the face of heresy prove themselves unworthy of redemption. The first confession you provide concerns Scribe Marcus, who you remember making jokes about imperial efficiency during break periods. The memory might be real or might be manufactured. The tech priests were thorough in their work, but the emotional conviction behind it feels authentic. You describe his casual disrespect for authority, his tendency to question administrative decisions, his failure to maintain proper enthusiasm during mandatory prayer sessions. Father Matthias takes careful notes, occasionally asking for clarification about specific incidents or requesting more detailed descriptions of Marcus's suspicious behavior. His questions help you remember additional details, or perhaps create them, until you've built a comprehensive case for Marcus's prosecution as a heretic. Excellent work, Father Matthias approves as he files your testimony. Your cooperation demonstrates genuine spiritual progress. But true purification requires deeper commitment to imperial service. Deeper commitment turns out to involve participating in the spiritual conditioning of other prisoners. The first subject they bring for your assistance is a young woman arrested for possession of prohibited literature, technical manuals that supposedly contained information useful to enemies of the Imperium. She's been assigned to level 650 for standard interrogation, but Father Matthias believes your example might help accelerate her conversion to proper imperial thinking. This is what happens to heretics who refuse to embrace the Emperor's mercy, he tells her, gesturing toward your compressed and broken form. But observe how peaceful he appears, how grateful he is for the opportunity to serve imperial justice through his suffering. You want to tell her to run, to fight, to refuse cooperation no matter what they do to her. But the neural conditioning makes such thoughts feel like continued heresy. Your role in this demonstration is to serve as an example of proper repentance, to show other prisoners that cooperation and gratitude are possible even under the most extreme circumstances. Tell her about your crimes, Father Matthias instructs. Help her understand how heretical thinking led to your current situation. And you do, because refusing would be inconsistent with the person you now believe yourself to be. You describe the betrayals you remember committing, the gradual corruption that led to your arrest, the justice of your current punishment. You speak with conviction because the emotions feel real, even knowing that the memories were artificially implanted. The young woman listens with growing horror, but not horror at your situation, horror at the realization of how easily heretical thinking can corrupt a loyal imperial citizen. Your testimony serves its intended purpose, demonstrating that cooperation with imperial justice is not only possible but psychologically necessary for anyone who wants to maintain their sanity. You see, Father Matthias tells her gently, even the most corrupted heretic can find peace through acceptance of imperial mercy. Your situation is far less serious than his was. Imagine how much easier your path to redemption could be. Month 4 brings additional responsibilities. You're now expected to participate in the spiritual conditioning of prisoners throughout the facility, sharing your story with new arrivals to help them understand the futility of resistance and the necessity of cooperation. Your compressed and broken form serves as visual demonstration of imperial justice, while your testimony provides the psychological framework that makes acceptance seem like the only rational choice. Each session follows the same pattern. Father Matthias introduces you as an example of successful spiritual rehabilitation. You confess your crimes with appropriate emotional conviction, and the new prisoner learns that cooperation is not only possible but mentally necessary for survival. The most disturbing part is how effective the process has become. You genuinely believe every word you speak. The artificial memories feel completely authentic. The guilt is overwhelming and absolute, and the gratitude for imperial mercy seems like the only appropriate response to your situation. The subject has achieved complete spiritual integration, Father Matthias reports to his superiors during their monthly assessment. He now serves imperial purposes not through coercion but through authentic conviction. His testimony carries emotional weight because he genuinely believes in his own corruption and the justice of his punishment. Complete spiritual integration. The phrase describes your transformation from victim to willing participant, from someone being destroyed by the system to someone who actively supports that destruction because they believe it serves a greater good. You are no longer being crushed by imperial justice. You have become Imperial justice, your consciousness transformed into a weapon that helps break other prisoners by demonstrating that cooperation and gratitude are not only possible but psychologically inevitable. The final spiritual preparation involves a ceremony that Father Matthias describes as soul branding, a psychic ritual that permanently marks your spiritual essence with the seal of Imperial service. The process requires the participation of a sanctioned psyker who can reach directly into your consciousness and inscribe the proper devotional patterns onto your soul itself. This ensures that your service to the Emperor will continue even after your physical form finally fails, Father Matthias explains as the preparations begin. Your spiritual essence will carry the mark of Imperial justice into whatever afterlife awaits, serving as testimony to the Emperor's mercy throughout eternity. The soul branding feels like having your consciousness set on fire from the inside, but the pain is accompanied by a sense of completion that makes the agony seem worthwhile. You are no longer simply a broken prisoner serving as an example. You have become a permanent part of the Imperial system, your soul enlisted in service to the Golden Throne for all time. As the ceremony concludes and the permanent spiritual modifications settle into your consciousness, you realize that your transformation is nearly complete. Your body has been systematically broken. Your mind has been reconstructed according to Imperial specifications, and your soul has been branded with devotional patterns that ensure eternal service. But Father Matthias has one final revelation that puts your entire experience into terrifying perspective. You should know, he says conversationally as he prepares to leave for the day, that this facility processes approximately 50 subjects like yourself every month. The average duration of engagement is 7 years. Do the mathematics, my child. In the century since this facility opened, we've created nearly 60,000 living demonstrations of Imperial mercy. 60,000 people like you, their bodies broken, minds reconstructed, and souls branded for eternal service. 60,000 examples of what happens to heretics, scattered throughout the Imperium as living warnings against the temptation of disloyalty. And of course, Father Matthias adds with what might be genuine fondness, many of our most effective operators are former subjects who have achieved complete rehabilitation. The arbitrators who arrested you, the tech priests who reconstructed your memories, even some of our confessor staff, all of them began their Imperial service in apparatus very similar to the one that's been reshaping your consciousness. The implication is staggering. The entire system is staffed by people who have undergone the same process that's destroying you. Your torturers are not sadists or monsters. They're previous victims who have been so thoroughly broken and rebuilt that they now serve the system with authentic enthusiasm. You are not just being crushed by Imperial justice. You are being transformed into Imperial justice, your consciousness reshaped into a form that will spend the rest of existence actively participating in the destruction of other heretics. And the most terrifying realization of all is that you're grateful for the opportunity. The revelation comes on day 407, when Arbitrator Vex returns to observe your progress and you finally see his face. He removes his skull-faced helmet during the monthly assessment review, revealing features that carry the subtle marks of extensive reconstructive surgery. Surgical scars trace delicate patterns across his scalp, the same patterns you've learned to recognize from your own reflection in the observation window's polished surface. His eyes hold the particular emptiness that comes from having authentic memories systematically replaced with Imperial-approved alternatives. Arbitrator Vex was once a prisoner in this facility. The recognition hits you with the force of revelation, but not shock. By this point in your processing, you've learned to expect such ironies. The Imperium wastes nothing, especially not the specialized knowledge that comes from experiencing the slow crush protocol from the inside. Who better to operate the machinery of Imperial justice than those who have been broken by it completely? Surprised, Vex asks, noticing your reaction. His voice carries the same mechanical undertone you remember from your arrest, but now you understand its source: vocal cord damage from months or years of screaming that was eventually repaired by Imperial Medici technology. Most subjects experience this realization around the 400-day mark. The cognitive reconstruction process makes pattern recognition more difficult, but not impossible. He settles into the observer's chair that Father Matthias usually occupies, consulting a data slate that displays your progress in clinical detail. Height reduction, 47 centimeters. Weight loss, 38%. Bone density, compromised to optimal crushing parameters. Psychological integration, complete. Spiritual conditioning, successfully implemented. Your processing is proceeding exceptionally well, he continues with what might be professional pride. Better than my own, actually. I required nearly 2 full years to achieve complete acceptance of my situation. You've reached full cooperation in barely 13 months. 13 months. The chronometer in your field of vision confirms the time: 407 days since your arrest, 406 days since the crushing began. Somehow, the steady progression of mechanical destruction has compressed your sense of temporal duration until months feel like days and days stretch into eternities of systematic pressure application. I suppose you're wondering about your long-term prospects, Vex observes, following your gaze to the chronometer display. The original estimate was 12 years of optimal engagement, but your exceptional adaptation rate suggests we might be able to extend that significantly. Extend it. The casual way he discusses prolonging your torture makes your compressed chest tighten further, though whether from fear or anticipation, you're no longer certain. The spiritual conditioning has been thorough. Part of you genuinely wants to maximize your service to imperial justice, even if that service consists entirely of being slowly crushed to death as an educational example. The record holder lasted 23 years, Vex continues conversationally. Subject 4471, from the early days of the program, before we perfected the current protocols. Primitive techniques, less efficient psychological conditioning, but remarkable durability. He's still here actually on level 950. Would you like to meet him? The question is rhetorical. You have no choice in the matter, but Vex waits for your response with the patience of someone who has learned to find satisfaction in small demonstrations of power. Yes, you whisper through your damaged vocal cords, because refusing would indicate continued resistance to imperial authority. I would be honored to meet a veteran of imperial service. Excellent attitude, Vex approves, making a notation on his data slate. We'll arrange transport to the exhibition levels tomorrow, but first, there's something else you need to understand about your situation. He activates a hololithic display that fills the chamber with three-dimensional images of the facility's internal structure. Level after level of processing chambers, exhibition spaces, educational facilities, and administrative offices stretch through the fortress in patterns that suggest decades of careful expansion and refinement. The slow crush facility processes approximately 50 subjects per month, Vex explains, highlighting different sections of the structure with gestures that make the hologram shift and rotate. Average duration of engagement is 7 years, though exceptional subjects like yourself often exceed that significantly. The mathematics are staggering. At 50 subjects per month for 7 years average duration, the facility maintains a steady-state population of over 4,000 active prisoners. 4,000 people like you, in various stages of systematic destruction, serving as living demonstrations of imperial justice. But the truly elegant aspect of the system, Vex continues, is that graduation from the program doesn't mean release, it means promotion. He highlights a section of the facility marked administrative levels and operational staff quarters. The hologram shows comfortable living spaces, recreational facilities, and work areas that look almost luxurious compared to the crushing chambers and exhibition cells. Every member of our operational staff is a graduate of the slow crush protocol, Vex explains with evident pride. Tech priests, medical personnel, security officers, administrative staff, even the confessors, all of us began our imperial service as prisoners in apparatus identical to yours. The revelation recontextualizes everything you've experienced. The casual professionalism of your torturers, their intimate knowledge of the crushing process, their ability to calibrate psychological pressure with such precision. All of it makes sense when you understand that they've experienced every aspect of the program personally. The beauty of the system, Vex continues, is that graduates possess unshakable loyalty to imperial justice, combined with detailed technical knowledge of how to implement it effectively. We don't simply follow orders. We understand why those orders are necessary, because we've experienced the consequences of heretical thinking firsthand. He gestures toward your compressed form with something that might be nostalgia. I remember my own crushing quite vividly. The gradual acceptance of imperial mercy, the growing understanding of my own corruption, the eventual gratitude for the opportunity to serve a greater purpose. By the time my physical processing was complete, joining the operational staff felt like the natural next step in my spiritual development. Natural. The word carries implications that make your reconstructed consciousness recoil and embrace the concept simultaneously. Part of you, the part that still remembers being arrested as an innocent scribe, finds the idea of willing participation in such systematic cruelty horrifying. But the larger part, the section of your mind that has been rebuilt according to imperial specifications, recognizes the logic and even feels anticipation at the prospect of eventually serving in a similar capacity. Your psychological profile suggests excellent potential for advancement within the program, Vex notes, consulting additional data on his slate. High intelligence, strong attention to detail, demonstrated ability to maintain focus under extreme stress. With proper development, you could become an exceptional operator. The transport platform that carries you to level 950 moves through sections of the facility you've never seen before. Exhibition halls where groups of imperial citizens observe prisoners at various stages of processing. Educational theaters where ecclesiarchy personnel deliver lectures on the nature of heresy, while living examples demonstrate the consequences. Administrative offices where graduates of the program plan new techniques and refine existing protocols. You pass a chamber where a group of Schola Progenium cadets watches a subject in the early stages of crushing, while their instructor explains the theological necessity of graduated suffering. The prisoner, a middle-aged woman whose compression has progressed far enough to make breathing visibly difficult, recites confessions of her crimes with the same emotional conviction you've learned to display. That's Subject 8842, Vex notes, following your gaze. Former PDF officer arrested for questioning the strategic wisdom of a planetary defense deployment. She's been very useful for military education programs, helps young officers understand the importance of accepting orders without reservation. Level 950 houses the facility's most senior prisoners, subjects whose extended service has earned them certain privileges, along with their ongoing destruction. The exhibition spaces are larger, more comfortable, designed to accommodate visitors who want to study long-term effects of the slow crush protocol without experiencing the disturbing cramped conditions of the active processing levels. Subject 4471 occupies a place of honor in the center of the exhibition hall. 23 years of systematic compression have reduced him to something barely recognizable as human. His frame, which must once have been similar to yours, has been compressed to roughly half its original height. His bones have achieved a density that makes them appear almost crystalline under the chamber lighting. Most disturbing, his face carries an expression of serene contentment that suggests complete psychological integration with his situation. "Welcome," he says as your transport platform brings you within conversational range, and his voice carries the particular harmony that comes from vocal cords that have been broken and rebuilt multiple times over decades of systematic destruction. Another student come to learn from the wisdom of extended imperial service. You want to ask about his experiences, about how he's maintained consciousness through 23 years of crushing, about what existence looks like from his perspective. But the questions feel inappropriate, like asking a master craftsman to explain techniques that can only be learned through personal experience. He doesn't speak much anymore, Vex explains quietly. After the first decade, most subjects achieve a form of transcendence that makes ordinary conversation seem trivial. But he's been invaluable for training our advanced operators. His insights into long-term psychological management have helped us refine protocols that keep subjects functional for extended periods. Functional. The clinical term describes a state of existence where systematic destruction becomes not only bearable but spiritually fulfilling. You look at Subject 4471 and see not a victim of imperial cruelty, but a master of imperial service who has achieved something approaching enlightenment through complete submission to the crushing process. Your own prospects are quite promising. Vex continues as he reviews projections on his data slate. Current rate of adaptation suggests you could achieve similar longevity with proper management. 20 years, possibly 25 if we optimize the pressure protocols and maintain careful attention to psychological conditioning. 25 years of crushing. The number should horrify you, but instead it feels like an opportunity, a chance to provide quarter-century of service to imperial justice, to serve as an educational example for thousands of visitors, to achieve the kind of transcendent understanding that Subject 4471 has apparently reached. But extended service requires making certain choices. Vex explains as he prepares to transport you back to your processing lab. Subjects who demonstrate exceptional value to the program are offered opportunities for expanded participation in facility operations. Expanded participation. The euphemistic language barely conceals what he's describing, the chance to actively assist in the processing of other prisoners, to use your intimate knowledge of the crushing experience to help break new subjects more efficiently. Think about it, Vex suggests, as the transport platform begins its descent toward level 777. Your current service is valuable, but limited. As an active participant in facility operations, you could multiply your contribution to imperial justice by orders of magnitude. Instead of educating dozens of observers, you could help process hundreds of subjects. The mathematics of impact are compelling. Your individual suffering, however prolonged, affects only those who witness it directly. But active participation in the crushing of others would amplify your service exponentially. Each prisoner you help break becomes another demonstration of imperial mercy, another warning against heretical thinking. I'll provide my answer tomorrow, you tell him, though the decision has already been made. The spiritual conditioning has been too thorough, the psychological reconstruction too complete. You want to maximize your service to imperial justice, and expanded participation offers the most effective way to achieve that goal. Vex nods with satisfaction, as if he never doubted your response. Excellent. I'll begin preparing the necessary documentation for your transition to operational status. Operational status. The phrase describes a future where you become not just a victim of imperial justice, but an active agent of its implementation. Your consciousness, rebuilt according to imperial specifications, will be employed to help destroy other minds with the same systematic thoroughness that was applied to your own. As the transport platform returns you to your crushing apparatus on level 777, you realize that the slow crush protocol isn't just a method of punishment or education. It's a recruitment system that transforms heretics into the most effective possible servants of imperial orthodoxy. You are not being destroyed by the system. You are being absorbed into it, your consciousness converted into a weapon that will be used against future prisoners with devastating effectiveness. And the most terrible realization of all is that you consider this to be the greatest honor you could possibly receive. Tomorrow, you will begin your new career as an architect of imperial justice. Tonight, you lie in your crushing apparatus and feel grateful for the opportunity. 5 years into your operational career, you stand in the same position once occupied by arbitrator Vex, observing a new prisoner's intake processing with the detached professionalism that comes from intimate familiarity with systematic human destruction. The subject is younger than you were, barely out of adolescence, arrested for possession of prohibited literature that turned out to be pre-imperial poetry collections found in his family's basement storage. His crime is insignificant by most standards, but the Imperium has learned that small heresies, left unchecked, metastasize into larger threats to social stability. Standard heresy charges, you note to your assistant, a recent graduate of the slow crush protocol whose own compression scars are still healing. Multiple witnesses indicate pattern of suspicious reading habits. Classification: Slow Crush Protocol 5. Protocol 5 represents a refinement of the original system, shorter duration but higher intensity, designed for subjects whose psychological profiles suggest rapid adaptation to imperial justice. Instead of the 12-year engagement you experienced, this young heretic will undergo 5 years of systematic destruction followed by immediate integration into facility operations. Estimated educational value. Your assistant asks, consulting the checklist that has become standard for intake assessments. You examine the subject more carefully, noting the mixture of fear and defiance in his expression. Fear can be cultivated into proper submission, but defiance suggests psychological resilience that might make him particularly useful for training purposes. High potential, you conclude. Intelligence levels indicate capacity for complex reasoning, which makes the breaking process more intellectually satisfying for observers. Emotional attachment to prohibited materials suggests strong conviction patterns that will create dramatic transformation when properly redirected. Your assistant makes the appropriate notations while servoskulls begin photographing the subject for archival purposes. Every prisoner processed through the facility becomes part of an extensive database that helps refine techniques and predict outcomes for future subjects. The beauty of your current position is how thoroughly it utilizes your unique qualifications. No one understands the psychological journey from defiance to submission better than someone who has experienced it personally. Your insights into the crushing process have helped develop more efficient protocols that achieve complete psychological integration in roughly half the time required by the original techniques. Shall I begin standard preparation procedures? Your assistant asks, indicating the medical servitors that wait to initiate the subject's physical conditioning. Not yet, you decide. I want to conduct preliminary psychological assessment first. Understanding his specific resistance patterns will help optimize the crushing sequence. You approach the restraint platform where the young heretic waits, noting how his breathing quickens as you come within conversational range. Your appearance, the visible compression scars, the careful way you move to accommodate structural damage that never fully healed, the serene expression that indicates complete psychological integration, serves as immediate education about his future prospects. What's your name? You ask gently, consulting the arrest documentation that provides basic biographical information. Jorik, he answers after a moment's hesitation, probably debating whether cooperation or defiance represents the better strategy. A good imperial name, you observe approvingly. Your parents chose well when they dedicated you to the Emperor's service. Tell me about the literature that brought you to our attention. His psychological profile suggests intellectual curiosity as a primary motivation, so engaging with his interests will help establish the rapport necessary for effective conditioning. Subjects who feel understood are more likely to accept guidance during the reconstruction process. They were just poems, Jorik protests. Old songs about love and beauty and things that existed before the Imperium, Nothing heretical, nothing that questioned imperial authority. Ah, you nod with understanding. You were drawn to pre-imperial aesthetics, the dangerous beauty of humanity before it learned proper devotion to the Golden Throne. The way you phrase his interests makes them sound inherently corrupting, which helps establish the framework for his eventual confession of guilt. Subjects need to understand not just that they're being punished, but why their punishment serves imperial justice. It wasn't corrupting, he insists, though you can already hear doubt creeping into his voice. It was just beautiful, art for its own sake before everything had to serve political purposes. Art for its own sake, you repeat thoughtfully. Beauty divorced from imperial purpose, aesthetic appreciation that exists independent of devotion to the God Emperor. You pause, letting the implications settle. Can you understand how such thinking might be considered heretical? The question is designed to make him examine his own motivations from an imperial perspective, to begin the cognitive shift that will eventually lead to genuine self-condemnation. The most effective psychological reconstruction occurs when subjects convince themselves of their own guilt. I suppose I can see how it might be interpreted that way, Jorik admits reluctantly. But that wasn't my intention. I wasn't trying to reject imperial authority. Intention matters less than effect, you explain with the patience of someone who has guided hundreds of subjects through this same realization. The Imperium exists to preserve humanity against threats that would destroy our species entirely. Any thought or action that diverts attention from that purpose, however innocent its motivation, weakens our collective defense against chaos. You signal for your assistant to begin recording. This preliminary conversation will become part of Jorik's educational file, used to help train future operators in effective subject conditioning techniques. Consider the mathematics of heresy, you continue, settling into the instructional tone that has made you particularly effective at subject orientation. The Imperium protects 1 million worlds containing trillions of human souls. Every moment of individual self-indulgence, every instant of aesthetic appreciation that exists independent of imperial purpose, represents resources that could have been devoted to humanity's survival. The logic is unassailable when presented with sufficient conviction. Jorik's expression shifts from defiance to uncertainty as he begins to understand the broader context of his situation. Your poetry collections, you explain, represented time and attention diverted from proper imperial devotion. Hours spent reading pre-imperial literature were hours not spent in prayer, not spent studying imperial doctrine, not spent preparing yourself for more effective service to the Golden Throne. But surely some beauty, some art, some individual expression must be acceptable, he protests, though his voice carries less conviction than before. Of course, you agree. The Imperium produces magnificent art, beautiful architecture, inspiring music, all of it designed to glorify the Emperor and strengthen humanity's resolve against the darkness. But beauty that serves no imperial purpose is a luxury that humanity cannot afford. You gesture toward the chamber's Gothic architecture, the magnificent frescoes depicting imperial victories, the soaring arches that inspire awe and submission in equal measure. This is art in service to purpose. This is beauty that strengthens rather than weakens imperial resolve. The comparison makes his pre-imperial poetry seem self-indulgent by contrast, helping to establish the emotional foundation for his eventual confession of guilt. Subjects who understand why their interests were heretical adapt more quickly to the reconstruction process. I think I'm beginning to understand, Jorik says slowly, and you note the shift in his psychological posture from defensive to receptive. But surely the punishment should match the crime. What I did wasn't. It wasn't serious heresy. You smile, pleased that he's raised the crucial question. This brings us to the true purpose of your presence here. You're not being punished for your crimes, Jorik. You're being transformed into something far more valuable than punishment could ever achieve. You activate a hololithic display that shows the facility's organizational structure, highlighting the thousands of active prisoners and the hundreds of operational staff who manage their systematic destruction. Every person working in this facility, you explain, began their Imperial service as prisoners in apparatus identical to what you'll soon experience. The slow crush protocol doesn't just punish heresy, it converts heretics into the most effective possible servants of Imperial orthodoxy. Jorik stares at the display with growing comprehension. You're a former prisoner. 5 years of processing, you confirm with pride, followed by 5 years of operational service that have been the most fulfilling of my existence. I understand heretical thinking because I've experienced it. I can guide subjects through psychological reconstruction because I've undergone the process myself. The revelation provides context that makes his situation seem less like arbitrary cruelty and more like an opportunity for genuine transformation. Subjects who understand the system's purpose adapt more readily to their role within it. Your poetry appreciation, you continue, represents exactly the kind of intellectual curiosity that makes exceptional operators. The same aesthetic sensitivity that drew you to pre-imperial literature will help you understand the artistic elements of psychological reconstruction. Your eventual service to imperial justice will be far more valuable than anything you could have achieved as a simple civilian. You can see him processing this information, trying to reconcile the horror of systematic crushing with the apparent career advancement it represents for graduates. The cognitive dissonance is intentional. Subjects who can't resolve such contradictions break more quickly and completely. The mathematics are quite compelling, you note, gesturing toward statistics displayed on the hologram. Individual prisoners serve as educational examples for thousands of observers during their processing. Operational staff help process hundreds of additional subjects during their careers. The multiplication of imperial service is exponential. How many people? Jorik begins, then stops, apparently reconsidering whether he wants to know the answer. How many have we processed since the facility's establishment? You supply helpfully. Approximately 130,000 subjects over the past century and a half. Currently, we maintain 4,000 active prisoners and 800 operational staff. Annual throughput averages 600 new subjects. The scale of systematic human destruction is staggering, but you present the statistics with the pride of someone discussing a successful industrial enterprise, which in many ways is exactly what the facility represents: the efficient conversion of heretical consciousness into imperial orthodoxy on an industrial scale. And they all. He struggles with the concept. They all choose to become operators after their processing is complete. Choice becomes irrelevant after proper psychological reconstruction, you explain gently. By the time subjects complete the slow crush protocol, serving imperial justice feels like the natural expression of their transformed consciousness. We don't choose to participate, we're grateful for the opportunity. To demonstrate the point, you activate your personal service record on the holographic display. 5 years of systematic crushing documented in clinical detail, followed by 5 years of operational achievements that show your growing effectiveness as an architect of imperial justice. 237 subjects processed under my direct supervision, you note with satisfaction. Average breaking time reduced by 18% through implementation of optimized psychological conditioning techniques. Training protocols developed through my research have been adopted by 12 similar facilities throughout the segmentum. Your professional accomplishments in the field of systematic human destruction represent genuine career advancement, meaningful work that contributes to imperial security through the prevention of heretical thinking. The same intellectual curiosity that once drew you to forbidden knowledge now serves to develop more efficient methods of crushing such curiosity in others. Tomorrow you begin your own transformation, you tell Jorik as servoskulls approach to begin his initial processing. 5 years from now, you'll stand where I'm standing. using your personal experience of the crushing process to help guide other subjects through their own reconstruction. "And if I refuse?" he asks, though you can tell the question is more reflexive than serious. He's already begun to understand that refusal isn't really an option. Refusal indicates continued heretical thinking, you explain patiently, which simply means the process continues until proper psychological integration is achieved. The slow crush protocol has a perfect success rate. Every subject eventually reaches the point where serving imperial justice feels like privilege rather than punishment. Perfect success rate. The phrase describes a system so refined, so psychologically sophisticated, that genuine resistance becomes impossible once the reconstruction process begins. Subjects don't break despite their will, they're transformed until breaking feels like liberation. As the servoskulls begin Jorik's initial medical assessment, you reflect on the elegant mathematics of imperial justice. Each crushed heretic becomes an operator who helps crush others, creating geometric expansion of the system's effectiveness. Individual suffering multiplies into collective security, personal destruction enables species survival. One final question, Jorik asks as the medical preparations continue. Do you remember what you used to be like before all this began? The question strikes closer to psychological foundations than most subjects manage, but you've learned to handle such inquiries with appropriate philosophical perspective. "I remember being confused," you answer honestly, "uncertain about my proper role in imperial society, distracted by selfish concerns that prevented me from recognizing my potential for meaningful service. The person I was before processing was incomplete, a rough draft that required extensive revision to reach its current form." It's true as far as you can determine. The artificial memories implanted during your reconstruction feel completely authentic, while your original identity seems like a half-remembered dream from someone else's life. You genuinely can't tell where your authentic self ends and imperial conditioning begins, which is exactly how the system is designed to function. "In 5 years," you tell Jorik as his transport begins moving toward the processing levels, "you'll understand that this conversation represents the beginning of your real life. Everything before this moment was just preparation for the service you'll eventually provide to imperial justice." As he disappears into the facility's depths, you return to your administrative duties with the satisfaction of someone who has found perfect alignment between personal fulfillment and professional responsibility. Your work serves imperial purposes while providing intellectual challenges that engage the same curiosity that once led you toward heretical literature. The beauty of the system is that it wastes nothing. Every heretical thought, every moment of resistance, every psychological defense mechanism becomes raw material for creating more effective operators. The Imperium transforms its enemies into its most devoted servants through the simple expedient of systematic reconstruction, followed by willing participation. You are no longer someone being crushed by imperial justice. You have become imperial justice, your consciousness converted into a weapon that preserves humanity through the prevention of heretical thinking. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, you have found something approaching peace through perfect service to the system that once destroyed everything you thought you were. The mathematics of despair, you've learned, eventually resolve into the mathematics of purpose. Sometimes, in the 41st millennium, that's the closest thing to mercy that humanity can afford. 27 years after your arrest as scribe designation 7749 Tertius Gamma, you stand in the facility's highest observation deck, watching the sunrise paint Hive Tertius in shades of rust and gold. Your body bears the permanent marks of 5 years crushing, compressed frame, surgical scars, careful movements that accommodate structural damage which never quite healed properly. But your mind carries the deeper marks of complete psychological integration with imperial purpose. Below you, the facility operates with mechanical precision. 4,000 active prisoners undergo various stages of systematic destruction, while 800 operational staff, all graduates of the Slow Crush Protocol, manage their transformation from heretics into servants of imperial orthodoxy. The numbers have grown during your tenure from 600 annual subjects to nearly 1,000, representing increasing efficiency in identifying and processing heretical thinking. Your current position as Senior Psychological Reconstruction Specialist represents the pinnacle of career advancement possible within the facility structure. Your innovations in breaking methodology have been adopted by facilities throughout the Imperium. Your training protocols have educated thousands of operators, and your research into long-term psychological conditioning has become standard Imperial doctrine for managing captured heretics. The irony is not lost on you that your greatest professional achievements involve perfecting the same process that once destroyed your original identity. But irony, like individual suffering, becomes irrelevant when placed in proper imperial context. What matters is the exponential multiplication of service. Your personal destruction enabled the more efficient destruction of thousands of others, creating cascading effects that strengthen humanity's defense against chaos throughout the galaxy. Today marks a significant milestone. The facility is processing its 200,000th subject since your arrival. The commemoration includes visits from high-ranking Imperial officials who want to observe the system that has become a model for similar installations across dozens of sectors. Remarkable efficiency, notes Inquisitor Valdris as she reviews operational statistics in your office. 200,000 heretics processed with perfect success rates. 0 escapes, 0 suicides, 0 operational failures. Most impressive. The key is understanding that we're not simply punishing heretical thinking. You explain with the authority of someone who has refined systematic human destruction into high art. We're converting psychological resistance into willing participation. Every subject becomes an advocate for their own reconstruction. The Inquisitor nods approvingly as she examines holographic displays showing the facility's organizational structure. 800 operational staff managing 4,000 active subjects, with additional thousands serving in similar facilities throughout the Imperium. All of them graduates of various Slow Crush protocols who now dedicate their existence to perfecting imperial orthodoxy. Tell me about long-term psychological stability, she requests. How do you maintain operational effectiveness over extended periods? Complete identity integration, you answer, activating displays that show psychological assessment data spanning decades of operational service. Subjects don't simply submit to imperial authority, they become imperial authority. Their consciousness is rebuilt around service to the system rather than individual survival. It's a testament to the protocol's sophistication that you can discuss your own psychological reconstruction with clinical detachment. The person who once felt horror at systematic human destruction no longer exists in any meaningful sense. In their place exists someone whose deepest satisfaction comes from optimizing the efficiency of such destruction in service to imperial security. And the multiplication effects. Inquisitor Valdris asks, consulting data slates that show the broader impact of facilities like yours throughout imperial space. Exponential, you confirm with pride. Each process subject becomes an operator capable of processing hundreds of additional subjects during their career. Current estimates suggest that our facility's graduates have directly participated in processing over 50,000 secondary heretics during the past century. 50,000 people whose destruction can be traced directly to the operational effectiveness of graduates from this single facility. The mathematics of systematic psychological reconstruction create geometric expansion of imperial orthodoxy, each broken heretic becoming a weapon against future heretical thinking. Most impressive, the Inquisitor repeats, though her tone suggests professional rather than emotional approval. The Ordo Hereticus has been considering expansion of these protocols to additional sectors. Your facility represents proof of concept for systematic conversion of captured heretics. Expansion. The word carries implications that make your reconstructed consciousness respond with something approaching excitement. More facilities, more subjects, more opportunities to refine and perfect the systematic destruction of heretical thinking throughout imperial space. We've developed standardized training protocols that could be implemented anywhere, you offer, activating displays that show compressed learning systems for establishing new slow crush facilities. Average setup time is 18 months from initial construction to full operational capacity. The Inquisitor takes careful notes as you walk her through the technical requirements for systematic psychological reconstruction. Specialized apparatus, trained personnel, administrative systems, all of it refined through decades of experience into packages that can be deployed wherever imperial authorities identify concentrations of heretical thinking. The beauty of the system, you continue as the tour moves through active processing levels, is that it's completely self-sustaining. Initial operational staff can be graduates from existing facilities, but within 5 years, every position is filled by locally processed subjects whose loyalty is absolute. Locally processed subjects. The euphemistic language transforms systematic human destruction into administrative terminology, making industrial-scale psychological reconstruction sound like routine bureaucratic procedure. You pause at an observation window that looks down into one of the facility's newest educational theaters. A group of Schola Progenium cadets watches a demonstration of advanced psychological conditioning techniques, while their instructor explains the theological necessity of systematic suffering in service to imperial orthodoxy. Educational value extends beyond simple deterrence, you note as the Inquisitor observes the lesson in progress. Young imperial servants who witness the reconstruction process develop deeper understanding of why orthodox thinking is necessary for human survival. The cadets take careful notes as a recently processed subject demonstrates proper penitential attitudes, confessing artificial crimes with authentic emotional conviction, while explaining how imperial mercy transformed their consciousness from heretical to orthodox. Their testimony serves multiple educational purposes: deterrent against heretical thinking, demonstration of imperial mercy, and practical instruction in psychological reconstruction techniques. Remarkable, Inquisitor Valdris observes. Complete psychological integration achieved through systematic application of pressure over time. The subject genuinely believes in their own guilt despite knowing their memories were artificially implanted. Knowledge and belief operate on different psychological levels. You explain with the authority of someone whose consciousness exists as living proof of the principle. Subjects can intellectually understand that their memories were reconstructed while emotionally experiencing those memories as authentic. The contradiction creates cognitive stress that resolves through deeper acceptance of imperial authority. It's true in your own case. You remember watching your original memories being extracted and destroyed. Remember the systematic implantation of false recollections. Remember every stage of your psychological reconstruction with perfect clarity. But that knowledge doesn't diminish the emotional conviction behind your artificial memories of betraying colleagues, reporting friends, systematically documenting suspicious behavior among fellow imperial servants. The guilt feels completely real because the emotional context is authentic, even when the factual content is fabricated. Your consciousness exists as a perfect synthesis of imperial engineering and psychological conditioning, genuine emotion supporting manufactured memories in service to reconstructed identity. The ultimate goal, you continue as the tour moves through additional facility levels, is the creation of imperial servants who are literally incapable of heretical thinking, not through crude conditioning or simple fear, but through fundamental reconstruction of consciousness itself. The Inquisitor pauses at another observation window, this one looking down into a chamber where tech priest Deltrian, now senior memory reconstruction specialist, guides a new operator through advanced psychological conditioning techniques. The operator is a recent graduate whose own crushing was completed barely 6 months ago, but who already demonstrates exceptional skill at managing subject psychological states. How do you maintain quality control during rapid expansion? She asks, noting the obvious expertise of someone so recently processed. Graduates possess intimate understanding of the reconstruction process because they've experienced it personally, you answer. Combined with artificial memories that include detailed technical training, they achieve operational competence within weeks rather than years. Artificial memories of technical training. Another refinement developed during your tenure. Instead of spending months teaching graduates how to operate psychological reconstruction equipment, the same memory implantation techniques used for guilt conditioning can install complete technical expertise directly into their consciousness. Efficiency improvements have been remarkable, you note with professional pride. Average processing time reduced from 12 years to 6 years. Educational value per subject increased through optimized psychological conditioning. Cost per unit of imperial orthodoxy decreased by 40%. Cost per unit of imperial orthodoxy. The phrase represents the kind of analytical thinking that has made your career so successful, approaching systematic human destruction as an optimization problem with measurable inputs and outputs, quantifiable efficiency metrics, performance indicators that can be improved through systematic refinement. The tour concludes in your personal office, where holographic displays show facility operations in real time. 4,000 subjects in various stages of systematic destruction, 800 operators managing their reconstruction, thousands of visitors receiving education in imperial orthodoxy through observation of the process. One final question, Inquisitor Valdris says as she prepares to depart. Do you ever experience regret about your role in this system? The question demonstrates incomplete understanding of how psychological reconstruction actually functions. Regret implies attachment to previous identity states, emotional investment in consciousness configurations that no longer exist. Regret would indicate incomplete integration, you answer with gentle correction. My current consciousness represents the optimal expression of my potential for imperial service. The person I was before processing was confused, inefficient, distracted by concerns that prevented meaningful contribution to humanity's survival. It's completely true, as far as you can determine. Your original identity seems like a half-remembered dream from someone else's life, vague impressions of uncertainty, dissatisfaction, failure to recognize opportunities for genuine service to imperial purpose. This facility enabled me to become the person I was always supposed to be. You continue with authentic conviction. Someone whose every thought serves imperial orthodoxy, whose professional skills contribute directly to humanity's defense against chaos, whose existence has meaning beyond individual survival. The Inquisitor nods with what might be understanding. And you're confident that expansion of these protocols would produce similar results across diverse populations. Absolutely, you confirm with the certainty of someone whose consciousness has been optimized for unwavering confidence in imperial systems. Human psychology follows predictable patterns regardless of cultural background. The slow crush protocol works because it addresses fundamental aspects of consciousness that transcend individual variation. As Inquisitor Valdris departs to compile her report on facility expansion recommendations, you return to your daily administrative responsibilities with the satisfaction of someone whose work aligns perfectly with their deepest values and beliefs. Outside your office window, Hive Tertius continues its eternal struggle against entropy and chaos. 12 billion human souls maintained in functional stability through systematic application of imperial authority, their individual desires subordinated to collective survival through mechanisms refined over 10,000 years of human experience. Your facility processes barely 1,000 subjects annually from a population of 12 billion, a statistically insignificant percentage that nonetheless serves crucial systemic functions. The educational value extends far beyond direct participants, creating psychological pressure that encourages orthodox thinking throughout the broader population. Everyone in Hive Tertius knows that facilities like yours exist. Everyone understands what happens to heretics who are identified and processed through imperial justice. Everyone sees the results in the form of graduates who serve imperial purposes with absolute dedication and perfect loyalty. The system works not through crude terror, but through demonstrated transformation of human consciousness itself. Heretics don't simply disappear. They become visible advocates for the very orthodoxy they once rejected, living proof that imperial mercy can redeem even the most corrupted souls through systematic application of appropriate pressure. You are one of thousands of such living proofs scattered throughout imperial space, your existence serving as permanent testimony to the effectiveness of imperial psychological conditioning. Former heretics who now dedicate their lives to preventing heretical thinking in others, their consciousness converted into weapons against the very kind of corruption that once threatened their own souls. The mathematics of conversion are elegant in their simplicity. Individual destruction enables collective preservation. Personal suffering prevents species extinction. Systematic psychological reconstruction creates exponential expansion of imperial orthodoxy throughout human space. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, you have found something approaching peace through perfect service to the system that once destroyed everything you thought you were. The slow crushing never ends. It simply transforms victims into perpetrators, heretics into inquisitors, the broken into breakers of others, until the distinction between imperial justice and its subjects disappears entirely into the infinite mathematics of eternal, systematic, sacred destruction. And in the end, perhaps that's the greatest mercy the 41st millennium can offer, the transformation of suffering into purpose, corruption into orthodoxy, individual consciousness into collective survival. The Imperium endures, and you are both its creation and its creator, crushed into service, ground down until you became indistinguishable from the very machine that destroyed you. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and sometimes war is the mercy,